Hello and welcome back for the MLB DFS Slate breakdown for Wednesday, June 21st. We will be going over the night slate, the main slate for today. Now, make sure if you are playing on FanDuel, understand that the slate time does start at 3:40 p.m. over here on the West Coast, 6:40 on the East Coast, and the DraftKings one is the normal 7:05. So FanDuel does have one extra game in today's slate. Now, a little rundown on what we're going to go over. We're going to go over a quick review of what happened on last night's slate, and then we're going to go into the pitcher ownerships and projections on both DraftKings and FanDuel, and then some stacks that could be interesting for tonight's slate. And before we fully get into it, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe all of our YouTube videos. It helps us out a ton, enabling us to keep giving up free content. And if you are not already, come join us at LineStar. It's a nice place. Water is warm. $29.99 gets you access to all of the props and all of the DFS tools we have. Now, let's get into some fun. As always, we're going to go over to those ownership projections for pitchers. Now, 6 games on DraftKings, 7 on FanDuel. Highest game total is the Chicago and Texas game at 9.5. Ownership is likely going there, but we'll start with the pitchers. So we got Luis Castillo coming in the highest owned. If you do notice, Castillo and Ohtani are the 2 highest owned pitchers. They are also the most expensive. So keep that in mind. If you want both of them, you will have to pay down for hitters. Now, Castillo's in a great spot. Look, this Yankees team just hasn't been good. They strike out big time versus righty, 25.8% K rate. Their WOBA's low. They haven't been hitting Castillo in the last 44 at-bats. The one thing going against Castillo, he's averaging 55.6 less fantasy points win away. If you look, he hasn't been great away this season. He was okay versus Texas in Texas, but that was really the only start away that he's been all right with. Now, it is a small sample size. Not that many games that he's had away so far this season. So, I would take it a little bit of a grain of salt, but it is an interesting little thing to keep in mind just because he hasn't been great there. Now, outside of that, everything absolutely looks great for Castillo. High combined K rate at 29%. The BVP data looks good. Opponent splits look great. StatCast data looks great. Solid K rates. I like Castillo. The one thing is just he hasn't been as good away. So maybe that is a reason for you to fade him. Maybe you don't care. But Castillo looks like he has a good matchup at least. Now we got Ohtani versus the Dodgers. So combined K rate 25%. Ohtani hasn't been great lately, but he hasn't been that bad. 3.74 FIP. Not much different than his 3.3 over the last 20 starts. His K rate has been slightly down lately, 28% versus a 31%. But he's faced some really good offenses, so I don't really think it's too much that is wrong with Ohtani. I think he has been okay. It's just he's gone up against good defense or good offenses that can hit well. He's in a decent spot. He's just super expensive versus Dodger lineup that is pretty good versus righties. 180 ISO, 334 WOBA. The Dodgers are going to figure out how to get a run or two. So I don't love it, but I don't mind it either. So both of the studs today, pitching-wise, do have some question marks there. Next, we got Darvish versus the Giants. They don't, they strike out a decent amount, 22%, but they have a high WOBA versus righties, high ISO versus righties. This Giants team is just pesky and just hasn't gone away. The starters for the Padres have done really well, but the bullpen just keeps letting the Giants get into the games. Now, as far as Darvish, 4.15 FIP over his last 20, 4.5 over his last 5. However, faced Tampa Bay, faced the Rockies in Colorado, crushed the Cubs, faced New York in New York, and got crushed by New York. That is when Judge was still there, though. And then at Washington, and, they don't have huge K upside, but not a great offense either. But it was an away game. And once again, this is an away game. Darvish is fine. Not in a great spot. Not in a bad spot. The one thing I would have to say is this BVP data here. Darvish just hasn't been that good against the Giants. And if you look at versus the Giants totals, he hasn't really had ceiling games. He's just been kind of okay, been medium, outcome level Darvish. So I think that's probably what we're getting here. The one reason you may want to go here is because you don't want to pay for both the studs and you want to get a little cheaper. All right, so next we got Gavin Williams. He is a prospect, AAA and AA this season, tossing 60.13 innings, 2.39 ERA with 81 strikeouts. So he has solid K upside. He has been a very good pitcher. He is a good, very good prospect, and it's against this Oakland team that we know isn't that good. Their splits heavily favor the righties pitcher, 25% K rate, low WOBA, low ISO. Don't mind going Gavin Williams, especially at 5,700. I would not be surprised if this ownership is much higher than 33%. Plus, having one of the studs and then Gavin Williams enables you to do a ton with the pitching. So we got Whitlock at 7K. He looks fine. He's had some really good games lately. Okay K rate. Combined K rate is solid. Minnesota just strikes out a ton versus righties. But they also hit righties pretty well. 195 ISO is a very high team ISO versus righties. And the WOBA is solid. So, Whitlock has been a decent pitcher, but that Twins offense is solid too. Could go either way. 7K is a decent value, though, for a 26% combined K rate pitcher. Kopech going versus the best offense in the league. Your guess is as good as mine what Kopech shows up today. We know this guy has a huge ceiling when he's on his stuff, but when he's not, he can get shelled. He has been much better at home than away, 39% more fantasy points, but this Texas offense is extremely good. 2.05 ISO, 3.48 WOBA versus righties, 22.7 K rate versus righties. The combined K rate's 27.2%. It can go either way with this one, and I'm not going to tell you which way to go because I really don't know. Kopech is just a hard guy to figure out. His highs are real high, but his lows are pretty low, and he can absolutely get shelled or just not go very deep into games. Sonny Gray, pretty low owned versus Boston team. Boston's good versus righties. Boston's also hit him very well in the past, 349 and 47 plate attempts. But again, probably not enough plate attempts to really draw a full conclusion. He did have a decent game versus them earlier this season. So I don't mind Gray. I don't love it. Martin Perez, super cheap for a guy that, generally can work pretty deep into games. He just has a very low combined K rate, and he's averaging 73% fantasy points less when away. So that is very scary. And if you can see, most of his floor games have been when he's away. At Tampa Bay, at Detroit, Pittsburgh, he was fine. At Oakland, at LA, at Cincinnati, he was fine. So I don't love it, but he is cheap, so I understand it. Paul Blackburn came out and pitched an absolute gem last time out. 9 Ks, 5.2 innings. Before that, 5 Ks, 6 innings. Cleveland team doesn't strike out a ton, but they're not that good versus righties, so I could see you going here as well. Just not a ton of upside here. And that will do it as far as the DraftKings pitchers. Let's go over the FanDuel ownership here. We got Ohtani and Castillo by far leading the way again. Whitlock's in a decent spot here. And Aaron Nola with this Braves and Phillies game being added, he is on the slate. And I mean, you can always kind of go Nola, but he hasn't been that great lately. 4.6 FIP over the last 5. Solid K rate, but that FIP is a little scary, especially when you're going against Atlanta. And we know he's had a lot of matchups for Atlanta, so let's look at how he's done. And it's been very, very hit or miss. The one thing I will have to say that does work in his favor a little bit is when he has been home, those are pretty much when he's had his very good games versus Atlanta. Now, Atlanta does hit him well. Pretty hard to say which way to go here. Just, it's not a terrible pivot. The other thing with this game is there is some weather, so make sure to stay around and look at the weather, as that game does have a chance to be postponed. AJ Smith-Sauver, pretty solid young pitcher versus a good Philly lineup, though. 23% K rate. He does have some K upside, not a ton. With his price being up to 8K, I don't love it, but I don't mind it. And now let's take a look at some stacks. We'll stay on FanDuel today just because of that Braves game. So, highest owned, we got the Padres. Now, we'll look at DraftKings ownership too, just because, we're used to going over DraftKings as well. But highest owns the Padres. It looks like it's a bullpen game for the Giants, which, this Padre offense is hitting decently here. It's just, will they score enough runs? I don't know if a 4 or 5 man stack, if you're on DraftKings, is going to score high enough for the Padres to be optimal, but very well could. Angels, not sure who the Dodgers are throwing out there yet. But this Dodger pitching staff hasn't been good. Their bullpen hasn't been good, so you can absolutely go the Angels. The Rangers I do really like. I think Kopech can sometimes just get hammered, and when he does, it means home runs, means extra hit bases, and that's how we score fantasy points. So I definitely like that. As we went over, Martin Perez is way worse away, so the White Sox have to be a little interesting here. Minnesota, a pretty solid offense, so don't mind going there versus Whitlock, where we're truly not sure still 100% who Whitlock is as a pitcher. He is decent, but he can get shelled. And let's check out our highest projection here. We got the Rangers all over it. I am not surprised. I like this spot. We also have Atlanta picking up some steam. We know Nola can let up some home runs. These Braves hitters are very used to seeing them. You can also kind of diversify with not that expensive of a stack. I don't mind going the Braves in a spot that they will be likely somewhat low owned. Dodgers versus Ohtani. I mean, I never love going against Ohtani, but he has let up some runs lately, so don't mind it. Value-wise, Giants should be there. Darvish hasn't been great. 4.5 FIP over his last 5, and he's not as good away, so it's a decent little spot. Oakland, Gavin Williams will be on the bump here for the Indians, who is a very good young prospect, but he is a prospect making his major league debut. Not really sure what you're going to get from them. Don't really know if he's going to get some jitters or the spotlight might be a little bit too big for him. Mariners, I'm glad are popping up here. I wanted to talk about them. Burrito just hasn't been great. 6.45 over the last 5, 5.46 over the last 20 for FIP. You could do worse than going there. And ceiling-wise, Braves are all over it. Boston's there. Texas. I mean, all the best offenses just come up on the ceiling pretty much. So now click over to see some ownership here on DraftKings. We got Cleveland popping up. We got White Sox and the Twins. So very much different here. Texas is popping up a little bit as well. Don't mind that. And your highest projected on DraftKings as well is Texas, which I agree. Don't mind the Giants either. Don't mind Padres. Don't love it. And Dodgers don't totally love it. But that will do it today. That is our quick rundown of all the pitchers. Yesterday's slate. Oh, actually, sorry, I forgot. We have not done yesterday's slate. So we'll do that right now. I just jumped right into the projections here. So yesterday's slate, we'll look at the perfect lineups. Um, for the main slate on DraftKings, we got Valdez, who, I mean, we liked him yesterday. Then we have Detmers, who surprised everybody with an absolutely great game. Now we got a 3-man Cardinal stack with a 2-man Boston stack. So kind of interesting stack there. And then flipping over to the winner, it's FJ Bourne with 100K, and he went with Cole and Crawford, two pitchers that did very well. Cole was the chalk, but crushed. And he has a 3, 4, 5-man Cardinal stack that got it done with a 2-man Colorado stack and a one-off Kettle Marte. Good enough for the win, and he won by 12 points. That's a nice little win there. Now let's jump over to the FanDuel side and see what we got here. And all right, so Framber, once again, we have a 2-man Cardinal stack here and a 2-man Boston stack, and that will do it as far as the stacks. And if you see on this perfect lineup screen, you can see some of the data here. A lot of the time, it is a 4-3 for the perfect stack, but lately we keep getting these kind of 2-2s or 2-2-2s, but that is definitely not the norm for FanDuel. Now let's check the FanDuel winner, and I'm not even gonna. It looks like Ahmed's Bunny. He took the win with Jordan Montgomery pitching a gem. 46 points at a fairly middle price salary is pretty solid. And then he has the Boston stack, 4-man and a 3-man Cincinnati stack with Corey Seager in there. Gotta say, I love it. I mean, low owned Boston just went nuts. The chalk in Cincinnati went nuts, and he had it. And then Corey Seager to fill it out. It's a great spot. Nice lineup. Way to win the 100K. And that will do it for us today. Thank you guys. Have a good one. See you next time. Bye.